This presentation is based on a study of the effects of age on metacognitive efficiency conducted by Emma C. Palmer, Anthony S. David, and Stephen M. Fleming. It was published in the Journal of Consciousness and Cognition, Volume 28 of 2014. What was researched is the notion of metacognition and how age impacts or does not impact on an individual's ability to think about how they think, what thought processes they utilize in processing data, new information, and knowing about what they know and don't know. They identified several factors and they took an in-depth look at what they call judgments of learning or JWLs, feelings of knowing or FOX, judgments of forgetting or JOFs. They sought to identify the relationship between subjective reports and objective or measurable behaviors. The subjective reports tended by and large to be how an individual would feel about a certain circumstance, a situation, their experiences, or even what they perceive to be their strengths. The objective behaviors, however, would be those measurable things that would lend an understanding of the true nature of their capabilities. One of the arguments was that there is sometimes no correlation between the two. And an example that we would like to examine is the fact that somebody might think that they are a good driver in spite of the fact that they have increasing road accidents. The participants were randomly selected from two sources. The first one was getting a list of all the postal addresses in the boroughs of Lambeth and Southwark in London, the United Kingdom. And what they did was just send out invitations to be a part of this study. Those people who replied and indicated a willingness were then asked the further question of whether there was any kind of cognitive impairment. If the answer to that question was yes, if the answer to that question was no, then they were selected to take part. There were 28 participants selected via this means, and they were all healthy individuals between the ages of 18 and 84. The second group of participants in the study was registered with MindSearch database. So they would already have met quite a few of the screening criteria, such as cognitive soundness, no signs of Alzheimer's or any other impairments, neurological issues, or so on. And they will also screen further for inclusion criterion. Having met those criterion, then they were selected to take part. In all, there was a selection of 60 participants, 33 of whom were female. The purpose of this study was to ascertain, or simply put to rest, a debate that has been raging between two schools of thought on the subject of a correlation between age and metacognitive efficiency. One group of theorists holds it that the older and more experienced people are the more prone to accurate self-knowledge and greater metacognitive efficiency. Conversely, there have been postulations on neurological impacts on this efficiency by the prefrontal and parietal cortex regions, which can atrophy or diminish in function as we age. The purpose of this study was to decide which of these arguments carries greater weight and therefore put the debate to rest. The information was arrived at via a quantitative data gathering procedure, and metacognition was divided into two domains, memory and perception. A signal detection theoretic measure, or meta-D prime, was used to measure the efficiency with which confident ratings discriminate between correct and incorrect trials in each task domain. This is a relative measure, and so given a certain level of processing capacity, the method quantifies the extent to which an observer is aware of their performance. Therefore, perceptual metacognitive ability was investigated using Gabor patches. The participants were asked to identify in which of two sections the pop out of the Gabor occurred. And then they were asked to record their scores on a computer. After they had done this, there was no feedback given about whether they were right or wrong. However, they were asked after that to submit a response based on how they think they had scored on the test, if they were confident about their answer being correct or if they were not so confident. And they used a rating scale of 1 to 6, 6 being most confident and 1 being least. The older participants in this study who seemed to be having problems manning the computer were assigned a recorder who would have made note via the same process of their responses, and so the same assessment means was used. They used a similar strategy as well for the memory metacognitive ability. However, this time they used a two alternative forced choice method. And in this, what was done was that they were given 3 different segments of work to complete. And in each segment, the task was virtually the same. They were given a list of 50 words with time periods varying between 0.5 and 1.5 minutes based on the complexity of the list of words. At the end of the period of time, they were asked to choose from 2 words, one of which was on the list and one wasn't. And what they were required to do was identify which of the words had actually occurred on the list. They were then asked to record as before what their choices were, as well as how confident they were of these choices being correct. The results indicated that the statistical data suggests that there was no significant relationship between age and the percentage of trial questions answered correctly, even though older adults did show lower awareness of their perceptual ability. That means that they scored just about the same. However, the older people were less likely to be aware of how correct their answers were or incorrect they were. So they weren't able to analyze or know what they knew about or didn't know what they didn't know. On the memory trial, however, the performance was lower among the older participants. The researchers could identify no significant ties between IQ and metacognitive efficiency. Older adults, it was found, were less efficient at assessing whether they are performing well or badly on a perceptual task, and this suggests that there is a weak match between beliefs and abilities. The results extend those of a 2013 study by Wheel, which looked at 56 participants, 28 adolescents and 28 adults. This study showed that metacognitive ability increased with age during adolescence. While it is not the focus of these authors' study, the citation by Wheel points to the fact that metacognition develops over time after a certain degree of self-awareness has been attained. This suggests that much of the learning that takes place before adolescence would fall into the lower rungs of Bloom's taxonomy, where the learner would simply remember and understand. As such, standardized and high stakes tests like the SEA, which call for application, set the pre-adolescent learner at a disadvantage, taking, taking it that adolescence could occur at any point within a certain age range and does not necessarily restrict itself to children who have already entered secondary school. I think now that more emphasis needs to be placed on making students think about how they think in order to foster greater analytic and critical thinking skills.